Vaya con Dios, amigo.
What's that mean?
Go with God.
You're listening to the Rock God Podcast. Welcome to the Rock God Podcast, presented by heavy-vinyl.com, the only podcast that talks to rock and heavy metal musicians and artists about their beliefs or opinions about God. I'm your host, David Locklear, the owner and head writer at heavy-vinyl.com. Today we're going to be interviewing Scott Mellinger of the metalcore band Zao. Their history began as a metalcore band that was very devoutly Christian, but over the years their belief in Christianity slowly faded away until only one remaining member of the band, bassist Martin Lunn, was still a believer. Scott talks to us today about the evolution of Zao over the years, his belief system now, and how he's not angry at God. I'm good. How are you? This is David.
I'm good.
Having a busy day so far?
Actually, no. It's pretty much a dead day. Just kind of sitting around. We are preparing a new record, so I've been kind of. Last night we actually got together to get some parts like nailed because bass is getting recorded now. But yeah, today was like my nice relaxing day.
Oh wow! And so you allowed me to interfere with your relaxing day? That's kind of special.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate it. I was actually just looking at all the albums that you've played on, and it's funny. You've been the guitarist that has been on every album that I've listened to from Zao from the very beginning. Like the Save Yourself from Hell record is where I discovered you guys.
Okay.
And it looks like that's where you started playing, is that right?
Yep. Yeah, that was the first record I was involved in, yep.
Oh, wow. Yeah, to me, it's kind of funny that you're talking about starting you're putting together a new record, because it feels like that album came out maybe 6 months ago. And
well,
go ahead.
Actually, yeah, that's a cool thing. I mean, I think it's weird. I listened to some of that older stuff, and some stuff, no matter what's gonna kind of age because of the time period. But I think a lot of that Liberate stuff holds up still. So. Oh
yeah, I think so too. I really enjoy sharing that with people and then telling them, especially after they listen to it, that this is a Christian based album. That it's really surprising to a lot of people. It's like, no way, that's really hardcore for what they perceive to be a Christian rock metal vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Well, how far along are you on the new album?
New album, we are almost done with bass, and then Dan will go in and do his vocals, and then we will start mixing it. So we're hoping to have it out by spring next year.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah.
You going to have any kind of special releases like a lot of bands do nowadays where, you can get 100 copies of this one particular pressing of vinyl? Or? Oh,
yeah. That's our whole thing now is doing limited edition, special, numbered, colored stuff. We're all big vinyl people. I love all that. So, and with us, being our own label now, we can kind of be in charge of all that stuff. So it works out nice.
That's right. When did you guys start that label?
Well, we decided when we kind of started this back up, we talked to a few different labels that we had friends at, and the one ongoing thing is that, and by all means it's totally fair, but they expect a pretty decent amount of touring to support records. And we couldn't commit to enough that it would make sense for the labels. So we were like, well, we started this out DIY, man. Let's just kind of go back to that kind of route and do it ourselves. And I think the name is enough still that, we can make it work financially. And it's also been a lot more fun because then we have no pressure. We just do what we want. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't have any kind of outside expectations trying to dictate what you're doing.
Nah, not at all. Yeah, we just kind of do our thing and release our own records. And it's actually fun because, me and Jeff do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with that kind of thing. And but both of us are really, really into it. And Jeff kind of does all the harder work. I get to be involved in what's the cool stuff about picking colors and that thing. But but yeah, I love the inner workings of that kind of stuff. So we've been pretty excited to be involved in all aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of bands have really found a great deal of freedom in having that type of structure with their bands, not being bound to an actual record label for 3 albums or 5 albums or whatever the contract would be. I think that there are a lot of people who have really benefited from that. Yeah,
I think, labels are more and more making themselves become less important because when the way the music industry is kind of turned now, it's pretty hard to sell records like you used to. So labels kind of have to find other ways of making their money. And what ends up happening is they kind of start to bite into what let a band exist in their own money, so labels can take part of your touring budgets and it's just in your merchandising and all that kind of stuff to help them. But what they don't understand is then your artists aren't going to be able to survive because that was exactly what they did to survive. Mm-hmm. They never, you don't make money on records usually. And now with how everything, all the different type of internet-based things like Bandcamp and all that stuff. It's really not hard to get your own stuff out there, but it is kind of hard to get people to notice and pay attention to it because there's still, no matter as much of a bummer as it is, there's going to be gatekeepers. So if people at Spotify don't, either get anything from the label, a kickback or a help or something, it's kind of hard to get yourself, when you have your own label, paid attention to for some of those the lists and stuff that some of those kind of more known people do. So.
Right. And and you guys came along in the mid to late 90s, so in a way you kind of got a benefit from that sort of boom of CD selling, album selling, and whatnot before it kind of coming down. So you had established your name under the traditional paradigm, and you kind of get the benefit of that retroactively, I think.
Yeah, I think, we've luckily been around long enough that I think the biggest key for what we've done is we've been able to establish a core fan base that is interested in everything we do. So as long as that, it doesn't have to be a huge fan base. I've seen people write articles where if you have 1,000 people that like your band, you can actually make it work. But, we have a very rabid fan base that will buy our stuff and keep us in motion and come to the shows and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that was built up from the old way of doing things. So I don't necessarily look back negatively at all because I think that stuff did help us a lot. But yeah, we definitely have we've had a lot of help from that type of thing.
Yeah. Now speaking of your fans, you guys over the years have gone from pretty staunch Christian ideology to here recently. I don't even want to say that it's gone, but that it is very diminished and not really at the forefront like it used to. And have you had fans over the years kind of turn on you because of that? I
think I'm sure there's going to be people turned off by it. especially if, like, honestly, from coming from that original band. I mean, I would be okay with you saying that it is gone, because it essentially is.
Right.
But like that original incarnation, yeah. I mean, you have people that didn't really listen to heavy music, but they really appreciated the message of what Zao said, especially like before Dan even joined.
Right.
So those people for sure are gone, because they weren't really musician or music fans. They were more of like a message fan, which is totally fine. Mm-hmm. I think our biggest thing, and this is what we've tried to do with our transitioning and how we view that kind of stuff, no matter what, like, none of us are angry, right? So, like, I don't blame, or I don't even put blame on anything. Like, I've just, over the years that I've learned and read, like, I've just personally, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody in the band, but, like, I've just personally completely came out of that whole world and totally changed my viewpoint because of actually trying to understand it and read and maybe, I mean, people would argue, well, if you're reading that kind of material, of course it's going to sound bad. You're not reading Christian material, but I mean, I was like involved pretty heavily with the Christian material, and it never really made sense to me. And I've always questioned, even when I was there in it, I was a questioner.
Right.
And then I finally like started to kind of like, what's the word they like to use? Like,
backsliding.
Like, or like, I deconverted or whatever that would be.
Oh.
Just by like, by my own questioning and reading and learning other things, and not even, like, I mean, the typical people that you could read when you're coming out of that kind of religious background, but it's just like my questions were never answered, and I never felt totally fulfilled. So there was some of that, but I never was like, I think the biggest misconception about like a guy like me, like that's an atheist now, I'm not like mad at God at all. Mm-hmm. I just don't think he's there. Like, I'm not mad at it. I don't get angry. I'm not angry at the church either, because I think there's a lot of good aspects about the church. I still have tons of friends that are involved in the church, and I don't want them to be, not Christian unless they find that for themselves. Like, I'm not forcing them to see my viewpoints in my way. So like, there's not any anger in my deconversion. And I think a lot of people think there's anger because they see like a lot of the like forced, like the faces of whatever you call this non-belief thing. Some of them are kind of like, I think rightfully so, have been mocked and ridiculed by the Christian right. So they get angry because they feel like they're being slighted because of their intelligence or whatever. So it's a bummer of a fight, but yeah, none of us are angry. I just didn't work for me anymore. That's all.
Yeah. Well, did you come from a fundamentalist background, or was it a little more laid back?
I think actually I would say probably laid back. Like, my parents I was Protestant growing up. My dad was one of those like Jack Van Impe Hellfire guys. So, I mean, realistically, my childhood, I was always afraid of what was going to happen, because those guys talk about how the world was going to be ending soon. Jesus was coming back in this generation and all this kind of stuff. So,
right.
So a lot of that stuff kind of scared me when I was a kid. And then like in high school, we just had, and I think this is kind of the same story for a lot of people. You're always looking for friends, and you're looking for places to fit in. And a lot of that like early 90s Christian youth group stuff was happening. So like, it was a way to like kind of have a friend base and a family base sort of, and like, and then also too, like, parents aren't negative towards you, because you're listening to heavy music, but like you said, you had that argument of like, well, it's this message, right? So but yeah, I think really all of it boils down to like, you want to fit in with people.
Yeah. And
the circle of friends that we had around here got into that world, and I enjoyed their company. Like I said, I always kind of questioned all of it, but I was never, I never really like didn't want to learn about it. So just became friends with all those guys, and rest is history, I guess. But
Right.
yeah, a fundamentalist. I don't think, like, I was never like that kind of like gung ho religious person, Christian guy.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I mean, it does seem like when people are raised in I should just say a Christian environment, it seems like it's either fundamentalist or it is really laid back. There's never sort of an in between, and it. I'm sort of surprised that you say you came from sort of a laid back. Well, no, it sounds like you came from both. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is kind of a mixture because, like I said, my dad was really like he was into that that whole fundamentalist thing, but we weren't like we didn't go to church every Sunday. It's really strange to think about now that I look back on it, because like a lot of those type of people were at church every Sunday and like, really beat it down the throat. But he wasn't like that. I just think that, man, I look back now and it's really, really sad, but I think you're kind of seeing that same idea now in our political system. People love to have a team, and people love when that team is fighting the other team.
That's 100% true.
So I think a lot of that, like, hellfire, brimstone, Jack Van Impe stuff is, see, Jesus told you. Now you better watch yourself because you're going to be burning in for eternity. Like,
yep.
When, like, really, I mean, if we're going to really look at the tenets of Jesus, I don't know, man. I don't think that, like, he would be happy you're burning in eternity if that even existed the way, it's supposed to. It was always so many contradictions to me. But hey, what are you going to do?
Right. I mean, I spoke to Eric Wagner, the singer for Trouble and The Skull, a bunch of doom bands.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, I think he used to be a pastor in the 80s before he became the singer of the doom bands. And when I was talking to him, and he was talking about how in the Bible, it doesn't say anything about anyone going to hell for sinning or not believing in a certain way. And it was just interesting listening to him sort of become really frustrated, because I think he used to be one of those ones who would, you're going to burn in hell if you do X.
Yeah, I mean, but you can't. That's another thing too. Like with a bunch of my friends that have been that type of person, those type of people, and then they come out of that. Like you really can't beat yourself up about being that type of person, because like everything is kind of like your experience, and if your like experience totally relies on other people saying that kind of stuff to you, as a teenager, no matter what, you're impressionable. So, yeah. Now I can look back and be like, wow, is that terrible? But at the same time, when you're involved in it, like, you feel like, hey, well, this is a way to, like, help people, because you want them to understand how, like, detrimental it is not to be this. And then a lot of the problem with, I think, that is that people don't actually read the Bible. They just listen to everybody else's interpretation. So then they take that interpretation as their own without really understanding, like you said, that in the Bible, it doesn't even really talk about hell that much. I mean, it's kind of, but there are certain passages that you can pull out of context and use. So,
yeah, that's one of the things that drives me crazy is there are so many verses that are quoted, and when you look at the surrounding verses, it almost makes the verse that's being used completely opposite of what the person's trying to use it for.
Absolutely.
I think one of the ones I've really enjoyed rattling off to people especially when I'm faced with a fundamentalist who, when I explain to them that I'm a Christian, but I'm still being told I'm going to hell anyway for whatever reason. The one I always like is I like telling them John 3:17, where it says, "For he came into the world not to condemn it, but to save it," and that always throws them off.
Dude, and you do find a lot of where people, and the sad thing is they probably, I'm not going to sit here and say that I can cite scripture anymore. I mean, that's been so long, but yeah, people probably don't even know or have never really looked at it that way. They read their part that like solidifies whatever their belief is, and then the rest of it, we'll figure that out later. Maybe we just don't translate it right. Mm-hmm. But then they'll have their one part that they totally buy into, and it's like that self-identifying part, Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the really scary thing about any religion is people like that whole like infallible word, even though it's been translated so many different times throughout so long. How do I know that word is not, the right one? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these people will just take it in face value, but look at how many things have changed just within the last 1,500 years. Mm. I mean, look at today. Like, look at how many like universalism, like all these different type of sects that kind of like look at Christianity as like the fact that Jesus came here at all, we're all saved, so it doesn't matter.
That's right. I forgot that was one of the cornerstones of their creed.
Yeah. The whole thing is like, no, you can. I mean, no matter what you do, it does not matter, because the fact that Jesus gave his life, period, was what was needed, and that happened. Mm-hmm. So there's so many different interpretations of it, and how am I supposed to know? Right.
Yeah, when you start venturing out into the weeds, it can get kind of thick every now and then. Yep. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So how long have you considered yourself an atheist?
Probably. I mean, I probably started really, really doubting, like, right after Liberate came out. But I would say pretty strongly atheist, maybe since, like, Pray to Chaos, so, like, 2003, 2004.
Right. Oh, wow, so that's been a little while then.
Yeah, I mean, and it's never, like, the thing that was cool about Zao is I think that even with the records, like when Dan and Rush joined, even with Blood and Fire, the one thing that I loved about the band was that they were kind of fighting an ideal against their own belief. Like, they saw the hypocrisy in some of the churches around here, and it was actually like showcasing the personal relationship that you have with it, not necessarily the group relationship. Mm-hmm. So a lot of Zao lyrics, when Dan joined the band, were, here's the hypocrisies I see in Christianity. This is how I feel about it, and this is what it's done for me. And I thought it was a really cool take, because I mean, a lot of that like early like spirit-filled stuff mm-hmm. was essentially kind of like hammer and sickle. These people are wrong, and Zao was never like that. Like, Zao was always kind of like, no, like, it's a personal relationship. So even though, like, your interpretation is that, like, a gay person's going to go to hell, it actually has nothing to do with you. And it's none of your business. Mm-hmm. And it's between him and God. And it's not our place to judge or hate or any of that. It's our place to love, period. So, and I think actually the homosexual thing, the gay problems with Christianity are one of the first things that really pulled me away from it, because I have so many gay friends, and it really, really always bothered me that was such a sticking point for some reason. Mm-hmm. But, we were the type of, in that world, like, I don't know if it was necessarily that different than some people. I'm not saying like we were originators of this thought or anything, but, just the simple fact of like, aren't we just supposed to love people? Like, that's none of our business what they do. Mm-hmm. It's just that we are there for them no matter what. But we saw, even with Dan, like when some of his church members would hear his vocal style, they thought it was demonic. So they immediately,
of course,
distanced themselves from them, and which is totally the opposite of what those guys thought what Christianity was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It's funny too, because we live in this whole weird American society that builds like Jesus up as like something he's not too. Like, there's no way Jesus, from what I understood of the Bible, he would be a conservative Republican.
Right.
Just no way. It's actually diametrically opposed to some of that viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
and I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no. And I think a lot of what Dan and those guys were talking about then were like, yeah, like, aren't we supposed to be for like the weakest of us, for the misfits of us, like the people that are down, to build those people up. So
yeah, that's one of the things that I really began to understand and learn and appreciate about Jesus when I really started reading the Bible for myself instead of letting somebody else tell me about it. Mm-hmm. That was one of the first things that struck me, was how much of his ministry is just completely misquoted and misused.
Oh yeah,
it's unreal to me.
It's actually, and it goes to show you how when you what's a good term for it, when you use religion as kind of a battling tool, how easy it can be to misrepresent it and use it for your own, warped views or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or if you look to people, I mean, that's kind of that's kind of a big fault right there when you look to people. But yeah, I totally agree. I think even as an atheist, like, I think even Dawkins has said this. I mean, I have no problem with Jesus's teachings to a degree. I mean, I do think there's some stuff in the New Testament that can be talked about in a negative light, but most of all of Jesus' teachings, I have no problems with them at all.
Yeah, yeah, and I think most people who have any sort of normal sense of right and wrong and just being a decent person, generally, if they read the teachings, they'll agree with it. They don't have to say, admit him being the Son of God to go along with it and say, no, this is actually probably a pretty good rule of thumb to live by. Mm-hmm. Now, your bassist Martin Lund, is he still a Christian? Out of
the five of us, he still does attend church, and I do believe that he's, he has his own differing viewpoints, but he's definitely still a Christian.
Mm-hmm. And that's not, and so you guys don't have any problems with each other? That doesn't cause any kind of contention?
No, not at all. Like, and I do think, the way Marty, well, his whole kind of like philosophy on it is a lot closer to where we all are. I think he looks at it more like I was saying before, like, he tends to see the love of Jesus, not the condemnation of Christianity. Mm-hmm. So, and he knows we don't agree with the belief of what's, God and all that kind of stuff too. But at the same time, like, I don't have any problem with Marty believing that stuff.
Right.
And it's funny too, because like, it's not like he's ever trying to like, hey guys, let me teach you a little bit about this Bible here. Like, I think we have a very great mutual respect. We're all in different places. Marty finds himself still there, and he finds value in it, and I'm not going to do anything or argue any reason for him not to. And he affords us all that same respect. So.
Yeah, and and I think a lot of that comes with age as well.
Yeah,
I think agree. When you get a little older, you kind of realize, we're all going to have different opinions, and we'll just be cool instead of arguing with each other and telling each other why you're wrong and blah, blah, blah.
Yep. It's so sad to see, like, how our culture's become that, too. Like, I'm so done with, like, you're wrong, I'm right stuff. I mean, man, people you just live your life, and everybody's going to make mistakes, and everybody's learning. Nobody knows all the answers. I even if I disagree, that doesn't mean you're bad or wrong. It just, I disagree. So what?
Yeah. And that can be perfectly fine. I think that when you surround yourself with people who have that kind of respect for you and you have respect for them, I think it makes life much easier, and it's just a much more positive way of living.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, let's see. Is there anything that you wanted to cover that maybe I didn't get to in this interview?
I mean, other than, we're in the process right now of releasing a remix album. It's not a new album. It's like songs from Well-Intentioned Virus that we gave to friends for them to do remixes of. But we have always wanted to do something cool like that, so we're doing it kind of in this middle period. But we do have a new record that's being completed that'll be released next year that's all new and original, new Zao songs. So
it's almost like the fans are going to get almost two albums, like a sort of like the DVD bonus of a Well-Intentioned Virus and then a new one.
Yeah, we like to do that, especially now that we're kind of in charge of what we can do. Like, we don't have to ask anybody, and we don't have to go through any kind of crap to just put out whatever we want. So anytime we have an idea, and all of us, like, dude, I love so much different type of music. So I've always wanted to hear kind of Zao songs reimagined in a way that I wouldn't have ever thought they could sound. And we have just, I think the one key to our band and the one key to most bands, what you have to do is you gotta make friends, man. So like we have friends from the start of the band that we still keep. That's one of my favorite things about being in a band is actually meeting new people and having new friends from it, so, yeah. But we have a lot of cool friends that are into like doing some, I guess it like the remixes they're not all just like dance remixes or any of that kind of stuff. There's some kind of cool things that are adding, or they're taking like a guitar part and they like use it in a way I wouldn't have and loop it or like do any kind of like that. Right. So there's a lot of cool stuff in it, man. We were really happy with it. Who
are some of the artists that are reimagining your stuff?
Well, the one, actually, Joey from Anne Berlin did one for us. Our engineer did one. There's a guy also, his name's Steve Moore. He's actually worked on so much stuff. I mean, the guy's actually done some film scores. He's worked with this band called Goblin. Like, he's just done unbelievable stuff. So he's from Pittsburgh, and Jeff has known him for a super long time. So we had him do one. Jeff does another band called Emmanuel and the Fear. His vocalist did one for us that's really cool. Jeff did one too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Jeff did one. So, yeah, we just kind of like reached out to a few close friends that we keep in touch with pretty on the regular, and yeah, it worked out.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's something to really look forward to, considering that it feels like I just got your last record to have another one coming out next year. I mean, it's like, oh, great. Wow. This is like the 70s. They're coming out with records every 2-3 months. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, especially like, I think now that we do it the way we do it, we've like taken a book out of the Melvins kind of playbook. So
right.
They're always putting out like little limited edition 7-inches and new songs. You're always getting something. You'll get a record and then you'll get something weird. We try to do that just to keep it moving.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that probably really helps keep the creative juices flowing so you don't get stagnant.
It really does, man. And especially if you're a band that can't like tour 7-8 months out of the year, you want to keep yourself like somewhat in people's minds. So
yeah. Well, listen, it was a pleasure talking to you, Scott. I really appreciate it. This is it's an honor to have you talk to us about this kind of stuff, and I am looking forward to the new albums and hopefully get to see you on tour if you ever get to come around there.
Oh, absolutely, man. Thanks. I appreciate it, too. It's a lot of fun. I love doing these.
that's going to do it for this episode of the Rock God Podcast. Go check out our website at heavy-vinyl.com. Go to our Facebook page at Heavy Vinyl and Cassettes, our Instagram at Heavy Vinyl Records. Also, go check out Zao at their website, zaoonline.net. Big thanks to Scott and all the guys at Zao for taking the time out to talk to us. Also like to thank Impending Doom for giving us permission to use the ball-rattling music you hear in the intro and the outro. And I want to thank you for listening. See you next time. God bless.